It's difficult to see how Purim fits into the rest of religious Jewish life. A routine that usually consists of self-discipline and piety is interrupted for a single day of the year with excessive intoxication. The Christian symbols expert Jonathan Pageau suggests that Purim is not so exceptional. It's simply an example of the carnival, a feast of excess which appears in the Greco-Roman and Christian traditions as well.
You would have a feast of excess and a feast of upside down, where just for a few days, you would dress up in garish clothing, you would wear masks, you would have kind of devilish characters. There's Mardi Gras before Lent, where you'll have a carnival tradition, where you'll have cross-dressing and, kind of a bit of lewd behavior, with a more general carnival tradition, which includes in the Jewish tradition Purim, usually it was Bacchanalia.
It sounds reasonable to compare Purim to the traditions of Mardi Gras, Bacchanalia, and Halloween. All involve wearing masks and pushing the limits of normal behavior. But I would humbly suggest that this comparison is imprecise. Not only is Purim different in kind from these other traditions, but the divide is so great that it will challenge the very notion of how we view the relationship between normal and excess, moral and taboo, and ultimately the ambiguous distinction between good and evil. Here's the Mensch Sense take. Pageau explains that these festivals are designed to flirt with the taboo subjects that exist outside the realm of what we consider normal life.
Coming into the place where things show their exception, their upside down, their excesses.
When his interviewer, Winston Marshall, asks Jonathan what the purpose is of engaging with this upside-down world, he gives two answers.
One is to be like a valve for that pressure to come out. The other one is to reveal the upside down. This is the excess, right? And so we have to show it to some extent so that we can know it, contrast it to what's normal.
Our evil lusts and fantasies can only be suppressed for so long before they need some sort of outlet. So we blow off a bit of steam one day a year to prevent falling for more serious temptations. In addition, flirting with evil shows us what evil is so we can avoid it in the future. It's almost like a vaccine. Taking a tiny dose of the disease protects us from the real thing. But this analysis makes one major assumption, that there is some evil domain that exists beyond the realm of the normal and good.
What about that shadowy place?
That's beyond our borders. You must never go there, Simba.
The Purim story offers a shockingly different perspective. In a sense, Purim is not cautioning us against evil, but rather showing us that evil doesn't actually exist. Throughout the book of Esther, the Jewish people are persecuted by the king's evil advisor, Haman. At the end of the story, when the Jews are at the brink of annihilation, somehow the entire story is flipped on its head. Haman is executed, the Jews are saved, and order is restored to the Persian Empire. But it's more than just a happy ending. Every single strategic move that Haman made in his genocidal power play ends up contributing to his downfall and to the redemption of the Jews. His advice to the king to execute the queen leads to Esther's appointment as the new queen. His advice to parade himself on the king's horse in royal clothing ends up going towards his arch-nemesis, the Jewish leader Mordecai. The gallows he builds with the intent of hanging Mordecai becomes the instrument of his own execution. And the list goes on. What the Purim story is teaching us is that all the so-called evil designs of this world will eventually be exposed as just another mechanism for good. It's the ultimate game of Othello, or reversi in some countries. In the last moment, all of your opponent's pieces suddenly count as your own. This idea speaks to the general Jewish understanding of evil. There is no separate dominion of the devil. The force of evil in this world is just another agent of God, whose role is no less a part of the divine plan than anything else. The traditions of Halloween and Mardi Gras all treat evil as a very real thing. You can have a relatively harmless taste for a day, but eventually you have to back off. Evil has been kept at bay, but not redeemed in any way. On Purim, however, Jewish people drink in order to make the excess into something holy.
There's a rabbinical tradition which says that at Purim, you're supposed to drink enough wine and spin until you fall to the ground.
In truth, Pajot seems to have gotten some bad intel here. No such tradition exists. What the Talmud does say is that one should drink until he can no longer tell the difference between Mordechai and Haman, the righteous savior of the Jews and its evil tormentor. That's because for one day, it's possible to reach a world where good and evil meld into one thing. This is admittedly a dangerous idea, and while we are still living in the middle of history, it's not yet always possible to see how evil things can lead to good. It also goes without saying that we can't act in an evil way for the sake of a good outcome. But what Purim offers is a glimpse into a reality above the duality of good and evil. It's something that the rational mind can't handle, which is why we use alcohol to impair the rational mind just enough to taste that higher truth. On the surface level, there is an important purpose for the Halloweens, Mardi Gras, and other carnival-like festivals. If evil is real, then the best way to satisfy our human cravings for excess and chaos is to do it in a relatively harmless way. But on a much deeper level, we should instead expose the secret of evil. That in a monotheistic universe, even the greatest taboos are really just part of the same divine plan. If you don't understand this now, try watching the video again after a few glasses of wine. And that makes mensch sense.